Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Today, Youth Worker Nation, we are here with Amanda Stevens, and she used to be Amanda Hitchcock when I knew her. And Amanda's got quite a incredible life, incredible history. One thing is that I think I've known you, Amanda, since, I don't know if you guys were born right before I got here, right after I got here. You guys were tiny.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. That's right. You're very young, and I'm very old now.
Oh, I'm getting old too, though.
And Amanda's Umatilla High School. You brought up in Umatilla, and her parents, mom was a teacher, and her dad was a pastor's son.
Yes. Good.
Yeah, and
Yes.
And worked in industry for a long, long time. Was in charge of Sprint, I believe, and probably whatever it was before that, or something.
The telephone company in Leesburg here.
Okay.
And then transferred to Sprint, and then Embark. So yes.
Yeah. So Amanda, salutatorian of her high school. She was so good about her studies, she would not let me take her to lunch, but her sister always would go to lunch. Her twin sister, Valerie, and
It's a little too intense for myself.
And then different things happened at Florida State University, and then Cru, which at that time was Campus Crusade.
That's right.
Take us from there, Amanda. Where is life right now? Tell me where your life is and what's been happening.
So today, my husband and I are on staff with Cru, formerly known as Campus Crusade, and we have 4 kids. We're just in the mix of family and raising 4 young children, and I'm in the process of re-engaging in ministry after our youngest has gone to preschool this year, and kind of dabbled here and there in ministry over the past 4 years. And Larry works with research and development with a campus ministry. And so so that's kind of where we're at, is mixing it all up. And
okay, that's where you are today.
Yes.
And let's go back now then. Number one, tell me, in middle school, high school, college, which one of those places was your biggest influence, that person? Could be teacher, coach, it could be youth pastor, it could be volunteer. Who's that one person that just, bang, it comes to your mind that just, and it doesn't have to be ministry level, any level, that one person really was always impactful to you?
I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to give the credit to you,
What?
Doug. I am. I know. It's a little
How much
awkward
did I
because
pay
you're
you for this?
doing my interview. I was not paid any amount of money.
Okay, well,
do
okay,
this.
it's on record now.
Yes. No, but I would say it was really college, my college years at Florida State, when things started, conversations you and I had, because we were kind of on the outskirts of the youth group a little bit. Being at Umatilla, and Eustis was really big, and so we were kind of on the fringe, a little bit. And so that was great, and we didn't really do a lot of the missions trips. And so really college age was certain things sort of falling into place.
Yeah.
That the Lord kind of used to kind of piece together my steps, and so...
Yeah, and I'm going to throw you into the bus here too. So that first college trip to Colorado, I loved you being on our trips. And your poor dad's going, "What are you doing to us parents?"
Right, yes.
And he's going to kill me for saying that.
I know.
But all the money, and it was crazy because we're a small town and doing
Yes.
this. But I remember you talking about what life was going to be like. Who you were going to marry, and I don't know if you remember that conversation on the van.
I don't remember that conversation.
Colleen and I know.
Really? Oh gosh, that should be interesting.
Well,
really?
We're not going to talk too much about that, but it was really, really incredible because all the things that you said you were wanting you have much more than what you wanted then.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
good to know.
And so
I don't even remember what I said.
I mean, you had it defined because, hey, you're a thinker. You like things in order.
Oh, I love my ducks in a row. I have the row of ducks, which the Lord always is constantly shooting off. So that's what the Lord and I do, right?
Exactly.
I line up my ducks and then He, rearranges them on me, which is great. That's what I need.
But it doesn't feel great at first, does it?
No, because I'm I like everything, which is why He led me into ministry, which is why we had 4 kids in 4 years. Everything is complete chaos, which is great for me. It's very sanctifying.
Yeah. On the other side of it.
On the other side, that's right. Not in the moment.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. Most of us do. And people that that will hear this are going to go, I can relate with that. I get
so.
that.
Yeah,
right?
many moms.
Many moms.
Yes.
Yes.
But I remember, that trip, because that was a trip with Valerie and I and some of the friends that I brought from Florida
Kara.
State. Yeah, Kara. And I remember the conversations like on the mountain when we were talking, and I was brought up a believer and very much had done, the good girl in high school. And so I don't know, like very, from some Pharisee maybe in there, and I remember talking to you and saying, you realize why some of these kids came, Doug, right?
Yeah.
And hello, I'm sure you're like, but I'm like, because we went to a conference or something. So we were skiing, but then there was also a conference. There was spiritual content.
Yes.
And
we went to that one. It's one of the only times we did that.
Yes.
There was a conference on the mountain.
There
and we
was.
went there.
And there was
one night or 2 nights.
Right. And then another friend, Julie, who was there, who we actually saw, I think, a decision made. And But I remember having that conversation with you, kind of trying to enlighten you. Like you realize why my friends came, right? Like to ski, and I really remember you saying, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said, but the missionary says they came. And that's what the missionary says, is I don't care why they came, but they're here.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know as a youth worker what sticks.
Right.
And that stuck. And I just sat there like, oh, that's so true. Here I was completely like, they're not here for the right reasons and blah, blah. And, and I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, my heart is in the wrong place. And these are my friends. And that was very poignant for me to kind of get past this, just almost Pharisaical view of my faith, and see it as just more of like, these are my friends, and there's a bigger picture here, and the judgment of, okay, right, so it doesn't matter why they're here. The missionary says they're here, and we're grateful, and so that was huge for me. It was almost like you shifted. There was this mental shift for me, almost starting, because I never saw myself as a missionary, but starting that viewpoint, and everything wasn't so black and white. It was starting to mix a little bit.
I don't know if that's when you fell on the mountain, because I remember that we had a conversation when you were on.
I think that might. I think that might have been during.
That was our best conversation
a face plant
ever.
Or something.
Yeah, to me it was anyway.
Yeah, because I just visualize. We were both sitting down, and so I think I probably face planted or something in the snow. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and so that was huge for me, having that conversation. And there were other times, when I think you just really, I felt like you just lifted my eyes to just the bigger picture. And, the missions trips to Mexico, which we didn't do growing up.
Right.
And again, we were kind of on the fringe of that. And so everything I did was more as staff. Mm-hmm. And I remember going on those trips and experiencing it like the children experienced it.
First time.
It was first time.
Mm-hmm.
And having those emotions of I'm staff, but yet this is affecting me. And then I went on a couple of them, I can't remember. But the one I went on, Chad, I think, was on it, and Rick. I mean, I remember the little kids, but I was in between my internship. I just finished my internship with Cru.
Yeah.
And very non-committal with the future. And so they had told me, okay, Amanda, you need to either join staff, commit to raising your funds, or see where else God wants you to go. And, that was never an easy decision, But I remember being on that missions trip and having really gone back and forth and seeking the Lord, but really feeling fear and not really sure. And I distinctly remember being in a house with these children while everybody else was painting, right?
Yeah.
And doing the labor.
Well, you are the smart one.
Right. That's right. But it was just like the Lord reached down, and I just felt the call so clearly in that little garbage dump and in their home, and we're trying to communicate, but I really felt right there that the Lord called me into full-time ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, here you bring kids to expose the kids, but so many times the staff are affected, and life-changing for the staff who go.
The teachers, coaches, staff, those who are teaching, missionaries, youth pastors, they learn the most.
They do. We always learn most when we teach it.
Most. That's right.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And so in college, though, we're going to go back now. In college, because this was out of college now. You were out of college at that point, weren't you? Or were you a senior?
Yeah.
No, I think you were out because...
Oh, well, sure, because I was with staff.
That's right, because you did 2 years of...
Oh, right.
Of 1-year stints.
I did two-year, 1-year stints. That's right. Oh, gosh, you know better than I do. You could share my story better than me.
Well, I always loved following what was happening with you.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very unique. Doesn't happen to everybody. And so, but let's go to college. Tell me about when you knew you need to be a part of Cru, but what it took to get you there and what year.
You know what? I'm wondering if I go to heaven, if I will have missed out on what part of my ministry in college, because I remember being invited to Cru my freshman year, Kara and I walking back to our dorm room. And one of the girls who lived in there invited us to Campus Crusade, which I was completely open to. And I went, and this was as a freshman, and eager to get plugged in. And the first meeting I went to, I remember in the dorm room, they talked about dorm storming. That's what they called it, and they were all getting organized to go into the dorms and to share their faith and to just randomly knock on doors. And at that time, I was pretty freaked out. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I was like, and I considered myself, I've been raised in the Christian home, and so I was not a new believer, but I kind of justified it by saying I need to grow a little bit more in my own faith before I go knock on doors and invite other people. So I was really freaked out by that. And I did not get involved with Cru, Campus Crusade at Florida State. But then the spring semester of my senior year, it wasn't until then. And so I went all 4 years at Florida State. And then I started Bible study in my sorority. And so it was through that I intersected kind of with Campus Crusade. And kind of what I was doing over here, I kind of learned they were trying to reach the Greek system too. Mm-hmm. So I went to a few gatherings that they were hosting in some of the sorority houses. And then I met a staff person. So that was kind of my in with Crusade. But even before then, I think my vision came from a staff member from Wesley, the church, the Methodist church up there. And her name was Colby. And I don't know where she is. She probably doesn't remember me. But she was the girl who modeled, I felt, for me, how to start a Bible study in my sorority house. And I felt like I was completely at a loss for how to do it and had no idea. And I was in a Bible study with Colby, and she was the one who kind of gave me some tracks to run on, which later kind of, like I said, modeled what I would end up doing in my own ministry.
Yeah.
So she was, I wouldn't call her a mentor, but the Lord really used her to.
What year did you start the Bible study at Florida State?
Well, I started it pretty soon after I initiated. And so I was a sophomore, and I remember going to the president, and I remember talking to her in her room in the sorority house and kind of pitching the idea and saying, you know, what do you think about if we hosted a Bible study here for the girls? And it went, and the Lord brought actually different people who I met through the First Baptist Church up there, different women who kind of co-led with me. So I would just kind of gather the girls, and then there were a couple at Colby and a couple other women who were totally on board with coming to our house and helping lead it. And we had a couple, even like small little group events. And so I think it went maybe a year or so after I graduated. But it was huge. The whole time I'm kind of floundering. I'm not really sure how to do it. But it was what it was at the time. Then when I joined Campus Crusade, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's so many resources for doing this, which was part of my motivation for my own ministry. But I think that my senior year at Florida State was when the Lord gave me a vision, kind of coupled, because I think it was my sophomore year that we went to Colorado. Mm-hmm. So it was my sophomore year that you and I had that conversation on the ski slopes, in which I really brought that back to Florida State. And I felt like it gave me new eyes for even my sorority house. And I remember walking up to my sorority house weeping for my sisters there and just having this new vision of really why God planted me there. And the spiritual battle, it was such an intense spiritual battle. I mean, I remember walking up the sorority house too, feeling like the enemy was behind me, just shooting arrows at me. Mm-hmm. There was just this tension, I felt like. But I think that's how it all fits together, how the Lord kind of orchestrated that ski trip and kind of you changing my perspective and then giving me a heart for the women around me. And then me intersecting with Cru that last semester, really, when I was there.
There's just a whole lot of events that it's never one thing, you know? It's like a progression of things in all of our lives that get us to places we need to be.
Yes.
And so that's great for us to hear, and Youth Worker Nation, it's great for you to hear. These interviews are for you to understand how you are similar, not different as much as similar in the fact that if Amanda and I and her husband Larry can do these things, then you can too. We forged the trail and others before us. And when you know somebody else has made it, like the 4-minute mile, they said the human body can never endure a 4-minute mile. And then, and now high school students, since one guy did it, everyone started doing that after that. And so the same with what we're doing. So tell us about your days in Crusade. How did you end up at UCF, and how did all that happen?
Well, I was kind of anomaly with Cru.
Yeah.
Which I seem to have blossomed later with a lot of things, as you know. I mean, I did a lot of your trips as staff. And then a lot of the things I did with Cru, I did on the staff side and not the student side. And a lot of staff, you know, I realize now, they call them Cru babies, Campus Crusade babies, meaning they came to faith through the movement at a college campus, and they grew in their faith. And I was like this odd bird that intersected with the movement at Florida State, which was not huge at that time, through the Greek ministry. So I needed an internship for my communications degree. And because we're here in Orlando and the headquarters is next door, and I had already been doing ministry and thought, well, I'll do communications at a Christian location. So I went online and took the initiative to download the summer project application, which is for college students. Campus Crusade Cru offers tons of summer projects around the world and around the country for students to get ministry experience and different things. So this particular one was at headquarters, which is an hour away. So I thought this will be great. I can get credit and I can do it in a Christian environment. So I took it upon myself to apply, and I was accepted. And I did not understand at the time, now being on the staff side, how odd that was. And they actually called me. I remember being in my sorority room and getting a phone call from the HR person who was processing the files. And some of the things I had written about initiative evangelism were a red flag for her. Because, Crew's really big about knocking on doors or just sharing their faith. And I said, well, I believe that, I would like to build a relationship with somebody before I share my faith, And so I distinctly remember, and I didn't have fundraising experience. So she wanted to talk to me about what it would be like. Can I raise the funds to go on the summer project? And so as I've done summer projects and we process those things, I thought that having a kid on a project who's not involved in your movement, who's never been exposed to your language or things that you've done, it might be a little bit of a transition. And I had no idea. So basically, I went to the social event and I showed up, and this all Campus Crusade people, and they were talking about their summers, and I said, I'm doing a summer project. And I remember they all looked at me like I had 4 eyes. And they're like, who are you? And I didn't get it. And I was like, well, I got to raise funds. And I don't know. Maybe you can tell me how to do that. So I don't know. But I just remember all these people at Campus Crusade at Florida State. And the staff members like, okay, well, who are you talking to? Like she really wanted to come alongside of me. And like I said, until now, I could not appreciate how out of the box that probably was for the staff there, to have some college student who they've never met say, I'm going to go do a summer project with you guys. And so it was a high learning curve. So I did the project here at headquarters, and it was a 90-degree learning curve of just what ministry looked like. Again, the Lord taking my heart and giving me more of a heart for ministry, but now grasping, there's tools out there. And this is what I could have had access to, which I remember, if the Lord was prompting that girl to invite me to Campus Crusade. So I'm wondering, like, if I get to heaven, if I really could have had a really flourishing ministry in my sorority house had I been plugged in. But anyway, that was when Campus Crusade really came to life for me, that summer after I graduated and I was getting that internship credit.
How did your parents feel about all that?
It was hard for them. It was, and they are, it was really challenging, and they did a great job moving into that. I think that it went against a lot of conceptions they had formed in their mind, even about ministry, and the thought of me raising funds it challenged their thinking. When I decided to join staff after that trip to Mexico, which was pivotal, it was where the Lord really told me, I'm moving you into full-time ministry. And I really felt that call there. Well, then I had to do the fundraising as a single person, and came home to my parents' house. But all the stuff that goes with that is there's just so much more behind that than just raising the money, as you know. It's not just about raising funds for ministry. There's so many spin-offs. The Lord did so much during that time with my parents, with my own heart. It really had nothing to do with raising support. It got me there, but it wasn't the purpose of that year.
Yeah. What about your sisters?
I think that they were supportive. Yeah. So I think, I don't remember them, they saying too much. Both of them are involved in our ministry today. My parents too. My parents went from, when I told them I was raising support, they went from handing me a list of people not to contact and saying, they're friends, we'd appreciate, you not really contacting these people, to a full 180 of now, have you talked to this person? Or, this person would love to hear more about you. And them supporting a ton of of missionaries. And even my dad, so excited about a recent young family that he's met who's transitioning to FCA mid-career and wanting to connect us to them. I've just seen the Lord work in their heart. They've been completely supportive along the way, and I would never even hint at saying that they haven't been. But I do remember a conversation on the deck with my dad when I was raising funds. This was for a trip. Actually, it's funny how it all comes back to me. I was going to DC, and I committed to going to DC, I think that summer with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It must have been for an internship then. I must have been about to start an internship. And I committed, and I think it was for like a week and a half or something. I don't remember, but it was a good chunk of time because I remember my support coach really frowned on it because I had not raised all my support. And the internship deadline was September. And she was really giving me pushback. And she was saying, you are not going to raise your support if you go on this trip. And I remember thinking, I'm going to go. I don't know how God's going to provide. And I remember having a conversation on the deck with my dad, and he's like, we're behind you. We're here for you. If we need to make up the difference for you so you can report. That's how supportive my parents are.
Yes.
Just 110%. And I remember him saying, we're proud that you're doing this. We're 110%. So if you need me to do this, I'm going to do it. And I remember saying, Dad, God's going to show up. Like, I'm going to go and it's going to work out. And it was the Lord, somebody gave at like the 11th hour kind of thing. And it was a huge, it stretched everybody's faith, And that's why for me as a single woman, I thought, this is way bigger than me. He's teaching my parents to step out in faith. He taught me to still go do ministry, and I'm going to provide for this ministry over here while you're away. And so, you know how it is. It just mind-blowing stuff, right? That like Peter in the walking on water, and
Yes.
Jesus is like, come out, and I'm freaking out. Like, I'm gonna sink. I'm gonna sink in a big way, and I'm gonna take my dad down with me or something, So those little Joshua rocks in my life, where I can just build that monument and say, wow, okay, no, you totally have my back. And so that was probably pivotal, even with me, like joining staff and raising a bigger chunk of support.
Yes.
Was because I experienced that as an intern. So, yeah.
What would you tell someone who is thinking about going into any kind of youth work, whether it's in a school system, whether it's in Crusade or Cru, whether it's in a church? What would you say to someone who's hesitating and afraid? Or someone who's in ministry like you are, but they're very tired, very discouraged?
I think with full-time ministry, if somebody feels called to it, it's not going to go away. And so if you feel called to work with the youth at your church, or if you feel called to go into full-time ministry, I think obedience. I just felt that raising my support. I remember talking to the shepherding groups and going from group to group to group, and I really didn't worry about it, but I just remember communicating, if you can't join my team, that's fine, but I can't let it go. Like, I'm gonna go. I don't know when, but it's not, God's not gonna let this go off me. And so I think the obedience, I just remember that with full-time ministry.
And I'll interject here while you're getting ready to say this next thing. You said something very key that's key to people who are going to go on some kind of trip that's going to impact people, or going to go into a ministry, or going to go somewhere that they need to take other people with them. And Mike Iaconelli, who started Youth Specialties, he said, if you're going to go on a mission trip, he said, you don't go, does anybody want to go on a mission trip? The answer is no. He said, the way you go on a mission trip, or the way you go to some trip, ski trip, Colorado, whatever, he says you go, hey, I'm going to Mexico. Who's going with me? And what you did was that. You may not support me, but I want you to know I'm going. People want to follow that.
Yes. And I did. And I mean, whole shepherding groups joined my support team. So, I mean.
As they should.
Well, Trinity was huge. Trinity was huge for me getting there. But I think the one thing I've learned too is getting out of myself. And I mean that, and you were pivotal, like that ski conversation, the trips to Mexico. Even when during that year when I joined staff and I worked at the traffic department in Tavares while I was raising support, processing the citations that came in. And I would make phone calls at night after I got home from work. And the entire time just wanting to get to UCF, right? And like, I'm the savior of the Greek system over there, and nothing's going to happen until I get there. You know, people are going to die on the vine until Amanda Hitchcock reports with her ministry. And it took so much longer, as normally it does. But then I realized there was this woman in the traffic department, and over the year I was there, which took way longer than I wanted. Her husband developed cancer, and she had to leave her job to care for her husband full time. And basically I was the interim role for whatever she needed to get done. And her husband passed while I was there.
Oh, wow.
And she came in. She was able to re-enter her job as I had became fully funded and I was leaving the traffic department. And we had a conversation before I left, and she said, Amanda, if you hadn't been here, I would have lost my job. And she was an elderly woman. I mean, she had grandkids, and now she was single. She was supporting her grandkids, kind of a situation like that. And I just remember her crying in front of me and saying, I would have no job if you were here. And so for me, like, just the bigger picture of like taking myself out of the equation, where it's not all about me. And the Lord sees so many different people. He sees the bigger picture. And again, I thought, oh my gosh, it's so not about my ministry at UCF. Like the Lord saw Pam. The Lord saw this woman who is so dear to him, and he wanted me to intersect with her. And that's why it took the time. Like you said, the timing in ministry is so crucial. And I didn't know that. You know, the whole time I'm twiddling my thumbs like, who's going to come on my team? I need more people so I can go. This is taking way too long. And then realizing like, oh my goodness, there was so much more going on. And so I think just having that perspective, whether it's youth ministry or the trips or whatever, it's just expectant of the Lord's usually up to something big. And if you don't engage with that, if you feel the least bit called to pursue that, then we are the ones that are missing out on experiencing those moments of, wow, you used me in somebody else's life, or we're just simply the vessels for him. And it could be a middle school. I think about the middle school girls that I taught and those trips that we took. There's so many different stories going on. And so I think that's one thing he's taught me, is that I need to just get out of myself and allow him to show me the bigger picture of what's going on. And that's the cool thing about ministry, you know, is that there's always these God moments. Or you talk to people, you know, like me, who you're like, I don't even remember having that conversation, or I had no idea, you know, right. But the Lord used that to, you know, really impact somebody's life. And that's way cooler than anything else, you know. So I guess that's just one thing, like if for a youth worker, is just hearing, you know, how much you could really impact somebody for the Lord. And and to lean in, because it won't, as you know, it's hard. And ministry is very hard.
And that's important for people to know.
Yes.
We don't need to soft sell. Soft selling people hurts them.
Right. Yes. And so it's not all about, oh my goodness, 3 people came to Christ, and like, oh my goodness, the Lord's used me in so many ways. And there's those moments. It's like parenting, it's like there's great moments, but then there's a lot of the mess. So as you know, like with ministry, you're involved in people's mess. You're involved in your own mess. And so with ministry, a lot of stuff comes out of your own heart. And that was one thing that was hard, is taking steps of faith and knowing that if you do youth ministry, I mean, even going to that ranch, and I don't even know what trip that was. You took the kids to some ranch, rodeo or something that I went on. It was like a little overnight deal.
I'm sure I did.
I'm sure
I have no idea.
It was like I don't know. I'm remembering a rodeo, some youth event.
Probably.
And there was because Brittany did a dance there. She shared, but I remember she went up front while we were there, and I'm in the back, and you're just doing great, coaching me. I'm staff. I don't know, it must have been early on. And there was this time of, I don't know, it was decisions or whatever, but she went up to the altar, and I think I was like the only staff girl there. I don't remember. But I remember kind of sitting there like, okay. And you very gently nudged me, like it's one of my girls. But I remember having to step out of my comfort zone, because I thought, oh my gosh, okay, so now I'm gonna, which I loved Brittany, and I wanted to be there for her, but my own stuff was coming up, my own insecurity, but not wanting to draw attention to myself, or, like getting out of my comfort zone. And so yes, as a youth worker, it is hard, because it's about other people. And so there's this almost a sanctification process of, you're doing things, you're called to do things that you're not going to feel comfortable with, and it's being obedient to the Lord, and it's a greenhouse of growth sometimes. So yeah,
it is. I talk about that student ministry is a delicate ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Because it is. You said it. Greenhouse effect. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us, and this is what people need to hear. People relate better with our worst moments than they do our best moments.
Right.
What is your worst ministry moment to date that you can remember?
I mean, I think I'm still having of just balancing, finding that balance with ministry.
So do you fall apart?
Daily.
That's good to hear.
Daily. I mean, the other day after with the twins, because we have twin boys, and I love them so much.
You clause that.
Love them so much. But we were just having a rowdy day, and this was like this week or something, and I just like lost it. And I'm just like, I'm just like screaming, and they're just everywhere. I think it was like a rainy day, and I just lost it, and I was really trying hard to abide, and it just wasn't happening. And then I ended up finally just collapsing and just being like, Jesus. And I'm just so many times like that's not in the context of ministry, but
yes, it is. That is ministry. That is in context of ministry. Our life is consumed by those things that affect how we do other things. Well, it's all one big ball.
Well, for 8 years, I have daily had those moments of pulling my hair out and trying to do both the motherhood and the ministry.
And you're an organizer.
Oh, and I wrote this article. It was so therapeutic for me. But when the twins were 2 and Alana was 6 months, I felt like my head was coming up above water, and so I wanted to re-engage in ministry. And so I contacted Cru and thought, I'm going to do some writing. I'm going to do something that's manageable to me, because I had coached students before the twins came, and I just didn't know if I had emotional capacity. Somebody's going to die on the vine if I take them on, you know. But so I started this writing, and I had it all, again, my ducks were in a row. And I distinctly remember putting Alana down for a nap and set up crayons with the twins on the dining room table and gave them each paper. I mean, I'm like totally remembering this, and was really proud of myself. Had my laptop out, and I thought, working mom, like this, I'm totally going to nail this. Like, this is so, I'm going to write this amazing article, and I can do both. And so I'm like here and watching the boys. I'm like, okay, this is working. Well, all of a sudden it just starts to unravel. And I given them all like these brand new boxes of crayons, you know, which the Lord showed me a lesson there. I mean, these 2 perfectly sharpened boxes of crayons, and all of a sudden my boys just take the crayons, they start snapping them to pieces. And I'm sitting here like, okay, well, maybe they'll stop, you know. And I'll hear, and they're just going through the boxes of crayons, snapping them apart. And then they start using the little stumps, and they're coloring on the tile and the wall. And I'm still like, okay, I can do this, you know, like I'm going to do ministry, and I'm going to have the twins here, and I'm determined to do it. And it just becomes this free for all. And I mean, there's just crayons everywhere. And I'm just, it was the first time like, I can't do this, like this dying to myself of what I envisioned it to be. And the Lord gave me this picture. I think I strapped him to chairs with duct tape or something, and then I started cleaning up the mess. And I remember being on the floor looking at all the rainbow tile now, and picking up those little stubs of what used to be the perfect crayons. And the Lord just gave me this vision of, you know, you like things perfect. You like all your crayons to be perfectly organized and perfectly sharpened in the box. And that's not what ministry is going to be like from now on. It's not what your family is going to be like. And I just sat there, and I just remember looking at this mess of stuff and just really sensing the picture of the Lord saying, you know, this is the season you're in, and I need you to embrace the mess. And the mess is okay. But that's what 8 years has been like, of many moments like that, of just saying, you know, how can I do this, and how can I do both, and me screaming in the midst of all of it.
Now, what's your best ministry moment that you remember? It was just like you're on the mountaintop. Oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever.
Well, the one. And again, it's me stepping out on faith. It was before I had the kids, and I was at UCF, and we had a Greek event in one of the sorority houses, one of the big ones there. And it was like a Valentine's Day event, and we had put up flyers, and we had done what we thought to kind of gather people. For some reason, I can't remember. Oh, there was a conflicting event that night. So there was something else going on that I found out later that was going to conflict and was going to pull from my target audience. And I remember wrestling with that. And I remember thinking, oh, the girls are going to want to go to that fraternity event. There's no way. I can't hold my event. And I remember praying about it and thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to call it off? Am I going to scrap it? Am I going to step out in faith? And I remember making the decision. I remember going into the living room and filling the living room up with chairs in faith that the girls were going to come. And it was so huge for me. I thought, I'm going to look like a complete idiot if my leaders show up and 3 people are in this living room. But the Lord, it was one of those times when the Lord filled up the room, and girls were standing in the hallway to the living room. And so again, as a person in ministry, I mean, I'm sure there were girls who were touched by that event, but for me, it was the time when I thought, oh wow, I really stepped out in faith, and the Lord showed up, which is what ministry is about.
That's right.
But again, scary, and my reputation, my pride was on the line. and being willing to be okay with that. Again, this dying to self, this, so, yeah.
And this is for everyone. The best moments in life are the ones that you are determined that no matter how bad they look, you're not going to stop. You're not going to give up. You're not going to quit. And right around the corner, all the best things in life happen when the worst things in life look like they're going to destroy them, even if they're common things. So when you're discouraged, and I tell staff this too, when you're discouraged and you don't want to come and help that particular night, that's the night you need to come.
That's the night, yes.
Everyone
that's so true.
In your position that's been in for a while, you understand that. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. Other than the Bible, is there a book or is there material? Is there a video? Is there a speaker? Who would you recommend? What's that one thing that you'd say, hey, go read this. This has really helped me.
I'm going to answer the question outside of the box because there's not just one thing. And I think that that's the beauty of, for example, your podcast, of where we are now. I don't have like one resource, but I find that I just pull from a ton of different resources, and I'm always ingesting something. The mom podcasts, or books. I don't have the ministry training came from Cru. Cru has got some of the best training out there. So even developmentally, joining staff. I mean, there's How People Grow by Dr. Cloud, and all of these wonderful tools for just owning who we are as a person and owning our own faith. And so a lot of that came from Cru's training, which they offer. I don't have I just kind of pull from different podcasts that I listen to, and then the different parenting books that are out there.
So you are a podcast listener.
I do. I am a podcast for the mommy podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
I listen to the mommy podcasts and the blogs, and there's just, the beauty of it is there's a ton, it's the catch-22. There's a ton of information out there. And sifting through it, that's kind of the hard thing, is there's so many voices. But there's so much to draw from, which is probably the hard, but I just draw from all of it.
Well, and I'm going to encourage you here. I'm going to put you on the spot, and that is, you need to start a podcast. And they're easier than I'm making it. They're not video. You can, a lot of these ladies, they've got their computer, they got a microphone, and they just do that, and then they upload. And it's that easy. I listened to a guy by the name of Nick Unsworth, and then and he does video and audio podcasting. And I do this because they can be both once you videoed them. But you've got a lot to say. Here's why these women that are putting these podcasts out are not perfect women. I don't know them, but I know that.
Well, and like you say, it's those moments that we gravitate to, right? I mean, those are the common moments when you think, oh, that's great. You relate, like you said, you relate to those moments of, everybody just survived today, and that was a victory, and you feel commonality in that. And there's the normalizing that. And so you're right. It is it's nice to hear. When I pick up books, I love to read books of moms who include things in there. If I read a book, which I have one author who I really enjoy, but her ideals are so broad, and it sounds like she hit so many of them on the head, that sometimes I feel defeated when I read her content, because I think it's so lofty, and I would love to hit that, but my kids are writing on the tile, and and I've got one kid that's peeing in the trash can just for the heck of it, to see if he can fill it up,
He's a real boy.
And I've got twins that are competing with climbing the door frames, and climbing the refrigerator.
That's your podcast. The ladies who are real will relate.
Right.
With that.
That's right. And that's the kind of stuff that other moms want to.
Perfect moms.
That's right. And because we're all up to our eyeballs, and like before you came, I'm cleaning up pee in Mom's bathroom because Andrew pinched himself on the toilet seats and completely missed. And so I'm like, trying to get ready for an interview, and I'm like, Mom, where's the Clorox wipes? And it's you know how it goes. So
yes, I do.
It is like, and what I'm learning, and this is where I am now, what I'm learning is to be okay with like it being like spaghetti. And with it all coming together, because as you know, my personality is very much all the ducks in the row. And so I very much would like to have motherhood and then ministry and then friends. And what I'm learning is I have to let it all be together. And I have to be able to function together in the midst of all of it. And I can't compartmentalize my life. It's just not going to, it can't function that way. If I want to do anything for the Lord, or if I want to do anything, it all has to be like spaghetti, and I have to be okay with that, which is the mountain that I continually circle with the Lord of the sanctifying.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to ask you about Larry yet. I'm going to interview him, and then we're going to go into family because there's so much I want to ask you there. Which is why the Lord brought
me Larry.
Exactly.
Because Larry is the spaghetti. Larry's like everywhere, and so that's very good. And so.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I'll talk to Larry about it again, but it'll be good set up for others to hear him. But 1,400 universities, is that right? That he oversees?
Larry is, you will talk to Larry, and Larry's like Chandler on Friends.
Yeah.
Like sometimes to grasp what he does, you just still don't know. I mean, Larry is like the kind that the Lord just gives him opportunities. Mm-hmm. And he takes them, and he takes out and steps out in faith. But he doesn't just he's not like me. He doesn't live compartmentalized. And even at crew staff, like a lot of his team are like, this is my role. This is what I do. And he's so out of the box and so out in left field that I don't know if you'll get a real sense of what he does. You'll get a real sense of what God does through him. Mm-hmm. That's what you'll do.
Hey, is there an email that people can write you? I think they need to encourage you about this podcast. But is there an email or something that you can give out that you don't mind?
No, I don't mind. Yeah, it's just my first name, Amanda.Stephens, STEPHENS @CRU.org.
Okay, say it one more time, just in case. Did you run and get a pen? Okay, good.
Amanda.Stephens, STEPHENS @CRU.org.
Yeah, I think you guys need to write her and remind her that she needs to do a podcast. You're hearing it. You're hearing what I'm hearing. And Amanda, you have so much value. And you know that. That's why I love you so much. And I love her. We don't get to talk much on the phone.
I know.
But Larry lets us. And we get to talk. I do want to hear more of those stories. We won't be able to put it on camera. Yeah. Maybe sometime about our trips and things that you saw that I don't remember. I'm having people, students, to remind me and say, "Oh, hey, do you remember this?" I said, "No, tell me about it." And some things I remember. I remembered I always think about you and falling on the slope and us spending our time. Mm-hmm. It was the best time for me. Mm-hmm. In a conversation with you at that point.
That's interesting how the Lord, that one surfaces for both of us.
Yeah.
But I hope, and again, I'm not saying this because I'm interviewing, but I really do hope the Lord lets you know that you really were the catalyst in my life for ministry.
I am so thankful for that. I'm happy to hear that. It humbles me, and
even I remember.
I like to hear it though. Thank you.
In your office about support raising. I mean, I remember even being at a low point with MPD, and talking to you in your office at Trinity, and I can't remember what you said, but I remember walking out of that office feeling like I got a shot in the arm, and feeling like, because when you do that, there's so few people who connect with that.
Right. I raised funds for 6 years.
Who get that
badly,
and we all do badly a lot. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's by the Lord's grace sometimes. But I remember again that was just another time I remember leaving Trinity and feeling like, maybe I can do this, or maybe the Lord can do this, you know. But I just remember that, so thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, say, see you later,
Alrighty.
Youth Worker Nation. Say bye.
Bye, Youth Worker Nation. This is fun. I've been listening to other podcasts. This is good stuff. Thanks for including me.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.